Okay, I want to officially welcome everyone today. My name is Samantha Lurie. I am an adult services librarian for the Northville District Library. And today we are welcoming all the way from sunny Florida, Stephanie Seferian, who is the mama minimalist and host of Sustainable Minimalist podcast. And she just published her book, Sustainable Minimalism, very recently, and that will be added to our collection shortly. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, who's going to talk about all of that for us. All right, take it away.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be with you all virtually. My name is Stephanie. I am a podcast host and an author and a mom, and I am just so excited to talk to you all today about what I like to call sustainable minimalism. So really quick, just some housekeeping issues. I'm going to tell you who I am, what I do, why I do it. I have a bit of a PowerPoint presentation, and then at the end, I have added in time to answer your questions. So if, as I'm talking, something doesn't make sense, or you just want to say hi, or something comes up, just type it in the chat box. And at the end of my fancy little PowerPoint, I'll do my best to answer as many, if not all, of the questions as I can. So I'm going to start with a little introduction, then we'll get to the PowerPoint. Samantha, you did a great job. My name is Stephanie Seferian. I am the host of the Sustainable Minimalist podcast. I am the writer, the author of the book Sustainable Minimalism, which I believe your library has one or maybe two copies, thanks to the United States Postal Service. I am a mother of two daughters, and I'm speaking to you today from sunny Miami. However, I unfortunately do not live here year-round. I live just outside of Boston. I found myself really not just desiring a simpler life, but really needing one shortly after I became a mother 7 years ago. I had never really thought so much about stuff or consumerism or the environment prior. But after my daughter was born, I minimized my stuff. I decluttered my stuff out of necessity to ease my overwhelm, ease my burden. I felt as though the stuff was really suffocating me. Didn't have a lot of free time, and the free time that I did have was spent organizing, maintaining, cleaning, putting away, washing, etc. So I decided minimalism was for me, and I decluttered my stuff, as the minimalist influencers tell you to do. I decluttered, and I found myself at this very pivotal moment in which I'm standing over this literal pile of stuff. And I thought to myself, well, where is this all going to go? Like, where is it going? I had bought all this stuff that I didn't need. I shouldn't have brought it into my home. I didn't love. It didn't spark joy, whatever the adjective, the phrase is that we should all keep in mind when we're quote unquote supposed to declutter. And I just found myself really analyzing the environmental implications of consumerism. So at the time, I, looked to the gurus, and the gurus were talking about sparking joy, and the gurus were talking about letting go, and nobody was talking about letting go with the planet in mind. And so fast forward 7 years, I've got a podcast and I have a book all about what I like to call sustainable minimalism. And we're going to get into what that is. I'm going to share my screen. We'll get right into the PowerPoint and the more formal part of this presentation. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see my screen because it's lovely. We're going to start first with talking about consumerism. And when we talk about consumerism, I think where the conversation really needs to start is what I like to call the work, scroll, spend cycle, in which it looks different for each of us, but it probably looks something like this. We work to make money. we're tired from working. So we, at the end of the day, we plop down in front of the television or perhaps on social media, we scroll our hearts away. And then there are perfectly targeted advertisements that speak to our greatest desires, that know us better than we know ourselves, embedded within these advertisements, designed to get us to spend the money we just worked really hard to earn. And then we spend. And then we need to work harder to pay for the stuff that, we just bought. So what are the consequences with this behavior? Why even log into this Zoom presentation? What's the problem? Well, the first problem, which is the one that brought me to minimalism, which was an increased mental load. The mental load is the term used to describe the constant chatter in your mind, the never-ending to-do list you're always on. That's the mental load. And heavy mental loads are, not surprisingly, linked to feelings of distress and emptiness and stress, etc. So that's one consequence. Another consequence, of course, would be the financial implications. Excluding home mortgages, the average American carries $38,000 in debt, and that's 3 years old. However, if I had to guess, I would say that number might even be more in today's climate. And again, it probably doesn't surprise you that financial stress is linked to depression and anxiety. Then there are all the environmental implications associated with overconsumption. And when we talk about environmental implications of stuff, we have to talk about the before life of an item and the afterlife. So when we talk about the before life of an item, it's important to remember that to make this thing, this blender, this couch, this chair, whatever it is, it demands the mining, perhaps, or the taking out of the earth of non-renewable resources, like fossil fuels, like coal, like natural gas. And then on the other, and I should also say that, by the way, just so we're all on the same page, a non-renewable resource is what it says. Once they're gone, they're not renewable. We cannot get these resources back. And then when we discuss the environmental implications of consumerism, we also, of course, have to talk about the afterlife. Where does this stuff go? We're often, and I say we, I feel like I'm speaking to the choir because you all logged on to this presentation. So maybe not you, but we as a society tend to think that when we stick our items on the curb for the lovely trash men and women to pick them up, that they just are carted off to who knows where, out of sight, out of mind, right? But the reality is that when we send stuff to landfills, our stuff decomposes. And as our stuff decomposes in an environment without oxygen, it releases methane, which is an extremely powerful and potent greenhouse gas. And it also emits leachate. Leachate is this, I'm going to use the word sludge-like because I just think it's perfect, a sludge-like substance that leaks out of landfills and then pollutes groundwater and waterways that in areas that extend far beyond the dump. So I'm just really lowering the mood in this room, but we're going to keep up with it. Okay, so what is sustainable minimalism and why do I think it's really darn important? We're going to start with what sustainable minimalism is not. Sustainable minimalism is not just decluttering your house and like throwing your stuff in the trash can. It's not that. It is not decluttering and then going back out to the mall or to Amazon or wherever and buying new stuff to fill again your newly decluttered space. That's not sustainable minimalism, excuse me. Sustainable minimalism is not keeping items that spark joy and letting go of items that do not spark joy. That's not sustainable minimalism. And it is not really focusing on stuff at all. It's not about the number of spatulas you have or the items, number of, I don't know, blouses that you have in your closet. That's really not what we're talking about when we talk about sustainable minimalism. Sustainable minimalism, in my view, is a countercultural and radical stand against consumerism. And I should say here, I'm not going to go through this whole list. I will say these are the topics that I discuss on the Sustainable Minimalist podcast. These are the topics I discuss in really crazy detail in my book. You can read them at your leisure, but for the purposes of this presentation and in the next 30 minutes, we are only going to talk about the ones that are highlighted here. So those 5. And I picked these 5 because I get to talk, I'm fortunate enough to talk to a lot of listeners in my capacity as a podcast host, and I hear the same questions over and over again. The questions tend to center around decluttering, especially responsible decluttering, and also around reducing plastic waste in our homes. So that's where I'm centering. Again, this list is exhaustive, and if you would love to listen to me talk more about the rest of them, I have a podcast for that. All right. So, okay, so why bother? Why change what you've been doing, right? Why, like, enacting eco-friendliness into a house is daunting. I know, as a mother with 2 daughters, we have never-ending to-do lists, right? Why add more to that plate? Okay, so why bother? Well, sustainable minimalism reduces stress, anxiety, and family tension, and I know this firsthand. If you don't believe me, believe the research. Humans are predisposed to prefer tidiness, and that's because order and symmetry, back when we were cave men and women, helped to ensure survival. I should also say that in my personal life, before letting go of the excess and really focusing on what matters as opposed to the messes and the clutter pile and the this and the that, I have noticed a significant reduction in snapping at my spouse and snipping at my children, because when I do that, right, when I snap at my kids for not picking up their toys, I'm creating interpersonal stress, but I'm also not present in the moment with them, right? What's more important, the pile of junk in the corner or my two children? Another benefit, right? More free time. This is another one I have experienced firsthand, and it was actually, I would say, probably the first benefit to incorporating minimalism into my home. It was like immediate. When you have less, you have less to clean, you have less to put away, you have less to service, less to maintain, less to dust. The list goes on. And so right away, when I downsized our possessions, I gained an awful lot of time. And my slide here says that the average American spends 90 minutes per day on household upkeep. That's crazy, right? Time is finite. When you let go of stuff, and the key here is not bring it back into your home, you gain a lot of time. Another benefit, of course, is a smaller detrimental environmental impact. We all have impacts on the planet. Some are detrimental, some are advantageous. But 90% of climate scientists agree human behavior is contributing to global warming and climate change. So when we buy less, we are helping the planet, whether we want to or not. And I always get asked this question, like, well, in what ways are eco-friendliness, sustainability, and minimalism similar? And the answer is quite simple. When you desire less, buy less, consume less, and tread more lightly on the planet, you are being eco-friendly, whether you want to be or not. It's just the way it goes. And then finally, the final benefit I wanted to talk about today is that decluttering your home ushers in clarity. I believe that decluttering is not the end goal. It's step one. It's step one on a much larger journey towards intentionality, towards paying a bit of attention to the impact that we have on others and on the planet. So when you declutter, and I alluded to this earlier in the presentation, when you stand over a pile or piles of stuff, that tends to be a really pivotal moment. It's a teaching moment as you move forward as a consumer. Okay, so I have these lovely little 5 pillars of sustainable decluttering. It's not sparking joy and putting stuff in a trash can and putting it on the stoop or on the side of the road and having the garbage person take it. That's not what we're doing here. Instead, these pillars are what to keep in mind when you seek to declutter your home and live a more simpler existence. So we're going to go through them one by one. And I'm just going to check on the time. Okay. All right. So pillar number 1 is choose quality over quantity. So as you're decluttering that kitchen, you are going to choose the highest quality spatula among your, let's say, 5 spatulas, right? You're going to keep the silicone spatula, let's say, as opposed to the plastic one. There are a lot of health benefits, detriments to plastic that we don't have time to go into right now, but you're going to keep the highest quality one. If you have children and your child has, I don't know, 5 sets of blocks. My oldest daughter had 5 sets of blocks at one time. That's crazy, 5 sets of blocks. But when you're deciding which set of blocks to keep, you're going to keep the set of blocks with the non-toxic dyes, right? The wood ones, not the plastic ones. When you're looking at your furniture through the lens of quality, you are going to keep the ones without the flame retardants. The list goes on and on. These are just some examples. And I should also say here that your job as the, head of your home, let's say, is to be a curator, not a collector. So when you think about a museum curator, they do not keep everything. They keep the best, right? Pillar number 2 is to measure true value. Now, this is going to be a little controversial, but just go with me. Items that you're storing that you're not using have no true value. And that's because every item has a fundamental reason for existence. Like a chair is meant to be sat on. Its secondary purpose might be to look nice, but its fundamental purpose is to be sat on. A microwave is designed to heat food, right? So if you have, like I used to have, a basement full of stuff that you're not using, I argue that that stuff, even if it's working, right? Even if you paid a lot of money for it, it has that stuff in your basement or that stuff in your attic or that stuff in your garage or whatever it may be. It has no true value because those items are not living up to their utility. The only way that they will have value, the only way that you will restore that value is if either A, you start using the stuff, or B, you give it, donate it, or sell it to somebody who will use it. And I will say here, in terms of appliances and especially electronics, turnover rate these days is at warp speed. So you might have a television that you're not currently using, but it's a really nice model and you want to hold on to it. Well, if you wait even 1 year to donate that television or sell that television, it is going to be out of date. So keep that in mind as you think in your mind about the items that may be residing in your home. Pillar number 3 is to ask yourself the tough questions. Now, I should pause and say, I am going through this so fast, right? That's because I have 20 minutes left. And I have a lot of slides. So ask your questions and I'll get to them as I can. This is a really quick and really simplified version, but I'm going to keep going. So decluttering is hard. It's really hard, especially if you have sentimental attachments to your things. And I suggest that when it gets hard, you ask yourself some tough questions, which are, this is my number 1, would you keep it if you downsized? Right? Like if you have a, let's say, 4-bedroom house and you're going to go to an apartment in the city and live your best life, are you going to take this item? That question hits me every time. So that's my favorite. I should put an asterisk next to it. But would you replace this item if you broke? This is another great one. My garlic press snapped. Okay, my garlic press. I did not run to the store to buy another garlic press, even though I love garlic and I love garlic presses. I just minced with my knife. But when my cell phone broke, what did I do? I dropped everything and I ran to the store to replace it. So would you replace it immediately if it broke? Question 3 is, what is the worst that could happen if you let it go, right? We tend to, or we want to assume that the items that we have really have this amazing value and that they're special and that they're wonderful. However, in today's world, unless an item is one of a kind or rare or has sentimental value, significant sentimental value, you can probably acquire it again because there's this amazing thing called the internet and there's this amazing thing called libraries, right? I love books. I used to be a high school English teacher. I had a really hard time letting go of some books, but I could go to the library and check out my favorite books again if I feel the urge to reread them. Sorry. All right, pillar number 4 is to remove but don't toss. Now, this is really what sets sustainable minimalism apart from spark joy minimalism, right? You're going to set aside the items that you're ready to let go of, but you're not going to toss them. You are going to, let's say you set aside on your calendar a Saturday and Sunday to tackle your garage. Great. You're also going to set aside on your calendar the following weekend too, the following Saturday and Sunday too, to find places to send or schlep or mail the stuff you've decluttered. You are going to then drive it to those places, or then you're going to post it on the internet. And so I will say that, yes, responsible decluttering is extra work. But again, I think I'm speaking to the choir because you all are spending your Tuesday evening with me. It's something you're interested in, and I think it's probably something you're willing to do. Next up is the final step, pillar 5, is to analyze what's left. So I often hear it in my capacity as a podcast host, that people declutter. They spend 6 months of their lives, perhaps 8 months, 10 months decluttering their homes. And, it didn't provide the benefits that I'm touting. I would suggest you look at what I have here on these slides. Like, do you have too much furniture, right? If you're sidestepping couches and chairs and tables, and if your furniture is too big for your space, perhaps it's time to look at the furniture. Do you have stuff on your refrigerator? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you do, perhaps you take it down for 1 week, 7 days. Take it all down, put it in a file folder, and just experiment and see if you like the visual, simplicity. And if so, awesome. If you don't, you can put it right back up. Same with wall art. Do you have too many paintings? Do you put things on the walls because you think walls need art? I'm going to keep going. I'm going to just leave these here. I don't feel like this is the perfect use of my time. So if you have questions, add them. All right. So now what? All right. So you decluttered. Pat yourself on the back. You did it. But that, again, when we talk about decluttering through the lens of sustainable minimalism, that is not where we end. It's just the beginning. Next step is to commit to conscious consumerism. And I'm not going to read through these slides. This slide talks about what conscious consumers do reliably every single time before they bring an item into their home. Read them and ask your questions, just again, because of time constraints. I do have a couple points when it comes to conscious consumerism, a couple tips. The first is to build in buffer zones. And this is so overly simplified, but if you're rolling your eyes at me right now, I guess I would ask you if you build in buffer zones in your own life. I'm doing this presentation right now. I don't even always build in buffer zones. I'm telling you to do it, but even I don't. And that is because in the 21st century, e-commerce has made it so ridiculously easy to purchase. So easy. There is saved credit card information. There is the swipe right feature. Swipe right. Yeah. There is daily sales emails. There, I could go on and on. So sleep on it, right? Sleep on it. Put it in the cart, especially if you're like, oh my gosh, I definitely need these cleats for my child or whatever it is. Just sleep on it. It'll still be there in the morning. Also, I should say here too, that if, let's take the cleats for your child example. Let's say your son or daughter has his first or her first soccer practice on Saturday, and you need to acquire cleats for him or her by Friday night for Saturday practice. Get looking for cleats for him way in advance. Like Amazon benefits from 2-day or now even 1-day shipping, right? They benefit when we wait and we let it go to the wire. So if you start looking for cleats the week prior, if you start asking your friends, hey, do you have a size 11 cleats for Sammy for soccer? You are really empowering yourself to acquire those cleats by an alternative means. Next up is to flex your purchasing power. Okay, so really quick, 2 resources that I use often is ewg.org, the Environmental Working Group. It is a nonpartisan organization that rates health, beauty, and cleaning products based on a variety of factors. And then there's also buymeonce.com. If you're making a purchase, there's also Consumer Reports too. However, Consumer Reports is $10 a month. But buymeonce.com, its mission is to have you purchase one thing one time instead of buying that one blender 5 times because of planned obsolescence, right? So Buy Me Once makes recommendations for the best products on the market with the longest warranties that are designed to last, not designed to break. And now I will say Buy Me Once makes its money if you buy through them. However, if that's not what you're interested in, you can look at buymeonce.com's recommendations and then purchase elsewhere. Another handy dandy tip here is to trust reputable certification. So when you're shopping, you likely see these logos on some packages, right? GOTS certified, GOTS, GOTS certified. That's Global Organic Textile Standard, Fair Trade, USDA Organic, Forest Stewardship Council, FSC. Like those are third-party certifications that cost money for the company to get put on their product. So trust them. Again, we're not going to go into what all these are. We're just gonna lay it out there because of time. Again, assess hidden costs. So we always so price tag is a major determinant for consumers, right? Price is huge, if not the hugest for a lot of us. However, if you are fortunate enough to be able to think beyond that price tag, I suggest you consider hidden costs associated with stuff. The first is time, right? Like how much time are you going to have to put in to keep this product pristine? The other obvious hidden cost in the concept of this conversation, of course, is the environmental impact. Do you need this product enough to make the environmental impact worth it? And then finally, let's look at the time. Okay, here we go. Shift your spending mindset. Like we are primed. We've been primed thanks to savvy advertising executives to seek out the sales and the cheapest price. Can you shift to that mindset? Again, if you are fortunate enough to be able to, can you consider a cost per wear or a cost per use instead of looking at that synthetic sweater that's really not that warm, that's definitely not gonna keep you warm in Michigan winters, that's $20. Are you fortunate enough to instead maybe purchase that 100% wool sweater for $100? It's more money, but you're gonna get an awful lot of life out of it, an awful lot of extra life out of it. So the price on the price tag might be higher, but you are going to use it probably 10 times as long. So again, there's privilege discussion in there, and we're not going to go there today. But if cost per wear is something that you can keep in mind, I suggest you do. Okay, now we are switching gears and we are talking about your low waste kitchen. So after you've decluttered, after you have committed to shifting the way you've always bought stuff, you are going to look at your consumption of plastic. And plastic is where we're really going to talk today. So, well, I just said that, but we're also going to talk about some other things. When we talk about the kitchen, you know, zero waste is such a buzzword, right? Zero waste. Ooh, is zero waste possible? What even is zero waste? Like, if you are on social media, there's the influencers putting their year's worth of trash in a little jar. I am of the mindset that the vast majority of us, definitely me, and perhaps you too, we should not be striving for zero waste. We should be striving for waste reduction. And the main reason for that is because waste is not just plastic waste, or it's not just packaging waste. It's not just milk jugs, right? Waste is food waste. Waste is water waste, energy waste, and then there's the plastic waste. So we're going to go through these pretty quickly. And the reason we're centering on the kitchen is because in my capacity as a podcast host, this is what people ask me about all the darn time. And I'm going to have a sip of my tea. So 1 second. Okay. All right, so let's talk about water first. I once believed, and maybe you do too, that water is recycled, right? Water cycle, we learned about it in 3rd grade. But the problem, well, there are a lot of problems, but the big one is that humans are using up water quicker than the Earth's natural cycle can replenish it. The reasons for that are droughts caused by global warming, heat waves, again, caused by global warming, excessive pesticide and fertilizer use, which are polluting existing groundwater. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but here are just some real quick common sense ways to reduce your water waste. My favorite is, didn't finish my drinking glass of water, pour it in a house plant, right? I'm done with this drinking glass. Let's save it throughout the day instead of sticking it in the dishwasher. So you're going to have to, I'm sorry, reread these on your leisure. And if you want these slides, please email me. I'll give you my email. You can get them. But these are real simple ways to start thinking about how you can waste less water in your kitchen. Okay, we're moving along. Next up is energy waste, right? No, we don't really think about any energy waste, or at least I never did. But in the kitchen specifically, I have a couple tips for you. If you can use a smaller appliance, go ahead and use it. And when I talk about small appliances, I'm talking about the crock pot, the toaster oven, and the microwave, right? Why heat up the big oven if a smaller appliance can do the same job? You will save significant energy. Again, if you decide you do need that oven, don't preheat. Preheating is prehistoric. So just now I will say, unless you're baking cookies, brownies, cakes, go ahead and preheat. But if you're cooking anything else, stick your item in that oven as it preheats, and then shave a couple minutes off the cooking time at the end. You can also cook 2 items at once, no big deal. And then finally, on the stove top, your pot should be the same size as your burner. There should be no burner like on the edge. That's just wasted heat. Another consideration here is your lid should actually fit your pot. All right, All right, now we get on to food waste. And I should say, as a parent with 2 picky-ish eaters, food waste is something I can continue to struggle with. However, I have some tips when it comes to food waste. The first is to compost. And whenever I say compost, people just like go blank on me. They think it's dirty, they think it's smelly, they think it's this, that, and the other thing. And I will say, I used to believe the same. If you have a yard, composting is as simple as reserving your food scraps, your non-meat and dairy food scraps, and throwing it in. It's really that simple. And if you say to me, but I don't want compost, I don't garden, what am I going to do with this? I would say somebody that you know definitely wants your nutrient-rich compost. Just offer it up. If those don't sound like viable options to you, I suggest perhaps in your area you have municipal composting. That is becoming real popular, right? So you pay a little bit more money, but you get a special little bin that you cart to the curb, and the composting company will pick up your compost. You will see the hugest reduction in the amount of trash that you create by composting, without doubt. When I started composting, my trash became a third of what it was. If you live in an apartment, there are indoor composting alternatives. I'll just mention them quick, but I'm not going to go into them. One is vermicomposting and the other is bokashi. We got to move on. Another way to reduce food waste is to eat what's on your kid's plate. If this isn't parenting in a nutshell, I don't know what is. Eating your kid's leftover breakfast. It sounds silly, and I almost, I'm laughing saying it, but that reduces food waste. Like, why cook a third egg? Let's say I'm using egg as an example. If anybody's vegan, I'm sorry. Why cook a third waffle? I'll use waffle instead. When there's 2 halves of a waffle on each of my child's plate that I can eat for breakfast. Next up is to create an eat me box for your fridge. Now, an eat me box sounds so like fancy, right? It's not. In my house, it's a repurposed shoebox that I wrote eat me on it. And I stick the stuff inside that's nearing expiration, and I put it front and center. So when somebody opens the fridge in my house, they are instructed, and they now know, because I train them so well, that they have to eat the items in the eat me box first. And if eat me box sounds a little too militant for you, just get in the habit of rotating the items in your refrigerator so that the stuff that's nearing expiration is naturally in your line of sight. And next up is to learn how to preserve food properly. My grandmother was a huge canner, right? She had the pressure canner. She canned her gardening produce from the summer so that she had it for the dormant season, the winter. Winters are real bad in Massachusetts, just like I believe they are in Michigan. And that is a long lost skill. So if you have it, pass it down. If you don't have it, perhaps you have a friend or family member in your life who's willing to teach you. There's dehydrating, there's freezing, there's, we'll just stop there, but learn how to preserve your food, especially if you don't think you're going to consume it before you get to it. And then finally, meal plan and meal prep. I do not have time to talk to you about these today. I will say, although you might be rolling your eyes at me and you might be saying, oh my goodness, that sounds like a lot of work. I will say it's a lot of work on the front end, but it saves you an awful lot of time throughout the week. And it saves a lot of money because you're eating what you already have and you're not buying more. All right, plastic waste. This is my listeners' #1 pain point. And I will say it's a huge pain point for me too. Plastic is everywhere, right? So let's talk about it really quick. Recycling is the gold standard, right? Since the 1980s, I'm a 1980s child. I think actually pushing for recycling actually started a little earlier in the mid to late 70s. We believe we are being environmental stewards if we recycle, right? But the reality in 2021 is that recycling is overused and it underperforms. Without getting into China, and China sending us back our recycling. We can't go into all that today, but I will say that waste management companies throughout this country are overwhelmed by the amount of recycling that they pick up from our curbs every single day. And there are plenty of reports out there to say that waste management companies are so overwhelmed, they're just taking our recycling and dumping it in with the trash when they think no one's watching. I will also say here too that the average American generates 4.5 pounds of waste per day. So think about that, 4.5 pounds, oh my goodness. And then when we're talking about plastic, we definitely have to discuss plastic and our oceans, right? 13 million metric tons of plastic ends up in our oceans every single year. And I'm at the beach right now. I'm in Miami. I should say, as a side note here, I've been coming to the same beach for 15 years. And I was here for Earth Day. And with my children, we did a beach cleanup. I will say that this beach has changed in the last 15 years. And there's certainly the big plastic, right? There's the bottle caps, there's the bottles, but there's also these really little plastics that if you don't look carefully, you're going to think they're a shell, but it's really plastic. These are microplastics. Microplastic is a plastic that has reduced and reduced and reduced in size until it's small, right? Animals consume it. I just saw a news report the other day. Plastic was found in a human placenta. Plastic has been found on the top of Mount Everest. The environmental implications associated with plastic, we're not there yet. We don't know them yet because we're living it right now. So I argue that the most prudent decision is to not recycle our plastics, but it's to do our absolute darndest to not bring that plastic home in the first place. Okay, so, well, what do, right? We're used to going to the supermarket and buying the stuff and it's all wrapped in plastic. And how can we, like how? Well, remember that we're not zero waste, we are low wasters and we're trying to reduce. So step one is to expand your horizons. What can you buy not at the supermarket? Do you have like an ethnic mom and pop shop nearby? I should say I have a Middle Eastern store nearby. They let me go. They let me bring my own containers. I get to buy olives and hummus and baba ganoush, and I get to put it in my glass container and I get to go home and it is lovely. Can you invest in your local farm? Do they have a community supported agriculture program? Can you go to the farmer's market when it's not snowing? Can you go to your local bakery and bring your pillowcase and just be totally weird and just lean into it and say, hey, can you put my loaf of sourdough in my pillowcase? It's going to feel really weird the first time. It's going to feel awkward. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the crazy person. I don't care. Just do it. just go in like you own it, like you've done it a bazillion times before. And I promise you the second, third, fourth time you do it, it won't feel nearly as awkward. And by the fifth time it'll be second nature. Next up, the Bulk app, BULK. This is a great resource for you if you're looking for bulk stores near you, where you can bring your own container, fill it up from the bulk bin and bring it home. Next up is to linger amongst the produce. The produce section of your supermarket is a great place to get packaged free food. So you do have to bring your own bags, like those flimsy little produce bags at the supermarket, bring your own. And you don't even need to buy, you don't need to buy bags. I'm willing to bet you have bags already in your house that you can use. You can stick your produce in it and you can smile at the cashier when you check out. I'm going to go ahead and skip be discerning because we don't have time. But basically, if you can buy a product from a bulk bin, or if you can buy it in aluminum, or if you can buy it in plastic, you should definitely buy it from the bulk bin with your own container, or B, buy it from aluminum, because aluminum is from a recycling standpoint quite valuable, and then C, as a last resort, buy that item in plastic. All right, I'm not going to read this. You're going to have to read it as I talk. We are under the assumption collectively that we need plastic to store food. And I suggest that if you think that way, you challenge that notion, especially when it comes to freezing food, right? We believe that unless we put it in plastic, it's going to get freezer burn. That's not necessarily the case. Food freezes really well in glass. If you're freezing a liquid, just don't fill the glass up to the top. Leave a little bit of headroom. Food freezes really well in stainless steel. Meats, if you are a big meat eater, freeze really well in unbleached butcher paper wrapped in, taped with plastic-free tape. And then I would say if you have a reusable Ziploc, then go ahead, reuse that plastic Ziploc. If you already have one on hand, don't buy more, but if you already have it, stick that item that you put in unbleached paper in the plastic, seal it tight, and stick it in the freezer. The benefits to this are then your food is not touching the plastic, and you are reusing a bag. Okay, so common sense strategies beyond the kitchen. So we talked a lot about the kitchen because the kitchen is the major source of waste in our homes. But if you are looking to expand your efforts to get off of plastic and live a little bit more of an eco-friendly lifestyle in your home, I would suggest number one, this is for the kitchen. We'll just leave it here, but order takeout less often. Or if you love takeout, frequent the restaurants that allow you to bring your containers. And again, this is one of those instances where it's going to seem weird when you call them up and you're like, oh, by the way, can you wait to package it until I get there? It's going to feel weird. However, I would argue that in 2021, the time to be weird is right the heck now. And I would also argue that the restaurants, the corporations that are trying to do better deserve our financial support. Decline freebies. So there was a time in my life, I'm just checking the time, right? I got like 3 more minutes, where I would take that free pen or I would take that free t-shirt because, hey, it's free. Maybe if you are of that same mindset, you rethink that. Like, number one, do you need that clutter? Do you really need another pen? If you really need a pen, okay. But if you don't, maybe you just leave it. Microbeads and glitter, both sources of plastic. If you have a cleanser that has microbeads, those are nanoplastics, actually. You don't need them. Neither do you need glitter. And then finally, incorporate reusables, right? Like, the great thing about 2021 living is that there is a reusable alternative for an awful lot of disposable products. And if you want to talk more about this, we absolutely can. I would say, however, it's a slippery slope. Don't go out and buy all the reusables. That's a waste of money. It's also a waste of resources. So if you have something on hand that can form a second duty without okay, so I will just say this was a slide from the beginning. I hope you can hear me because, okay, I'm going to keep going. We didn't get to talk about all these things. Sustainable minimalism is all these things. And if you want to talk more about these things, I have a podcast for that. I also have a book for that. So here's my podcast, my book, my social media, and that is my personal email. I was feeling a little crazy when I made these slides and I thought, all right, I'm giving these Northfield Public Library friends my personal email. So if you ask a question, we don't get to it, or you just want to say hi, that's my personal email. I would love to chat with you. And I just thank you so much for giving me 54 minutes of your evening. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was wonderful. I'm just gonna peruse through here. We've got some comments as you were going along. Let's see, people have questions. So VG mentioned that Play It Again Sports. I think that was in reference to where you can find sports equipment that have been pre-used, I believe. Martha wanted to know if you could, I'm assuming, list what more reputable certifications there might be.
So Martha, send me an email. I'll send you what you need. It's too much to go into right now. There's like dozens of reputable third-party certifications.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, so someone just reiterating what you said. Message needs to be spread far and wide. The seeing through marketing gimmicks must start when our kids are small. Spending monies for kids can teach them the value of their money. Was this item bought worth the time spent on tours, etc.? Pauline wants to know, can you address how to handle tons of family photos?
Ooh, good one. I would say number one, keep them and do your best to preserve them. Perhaps you scan them and put them in family yearly albums. So like in my household, I am in the habit of at the end of each year, well, I should say if I am on the ball, I do it throughout the year. I'm not usually on the ball, but I create a family photo album for the year. And I just print the one album. So it's much skinnier. And then I print one off for both my daughters for when they're adults. It sounds like you have a bunch of like really old photos. I say digitize the heck out of those and then organize the physical copy by year as best you can and put them in a fire safe box, because that is a real important and a real sentimental possession that I, as a minimalist, would say you should hold on to.
Okay, so Frankie mentions that going organic is a must. I don't have to do the whole thing. Donna was asking if Northville offers composting of food waste. And it looks like someone mentioned if you have veggies without sauces, it can go into the lawn yard waste. Callie suggests using a food co-op. Let's see. Michigan's health laws prohibit reusing food containers in grocery stores. No word on reusing plastic bags, though. Using reusable cloth or mesh bags is good, but costs a tiny bit more because of store scales are pre-programmed to the plastic bags.
Can I comment on that?
Of course.
Sorry, I don't know Michigan's laws. And if that's the case, if Michigan's health laws prohibit reusing food containers, I would totally suggest, Frankie, you you start to talk loudly about that, because that doesn't make any sense. And I will say, yes, if you bring in your own container, it might cost a tiny bit more, but if you go to the right place, you can have it tared, T-A-R-E-D, and you can write the tear on the cloth or mesh bag, which is probably like 2-3 cents. And then at the checkout counter, the checkout man or woman will take away that tear. So just a thought.
Any more questions? You can just pop them into the chat. Let's say MJ Nolta says we typically use plastic bags for garbage. Any alternatives?
Okay, so they do make compostable garbage bags. However, or biodegradable, that's another key word. However, I will say that if you're sending that garbage to the landfill, it doesn't matter if it's compostable or biodegradable, because it's still going to the landfill. I would say, what do you have on hand that you can put your trash in without buying another product to put, again, your garbage in? So do you have plastic bags? Do you have paper bags? Do you have, oh my gosh, cereal box liners, right? Those bags are so durable and strong. You could, by the way, if you have cereal box bags, you can also freeze food in those. But I would say just looking outside the box and thinking about like, what else can you put garbage in? I should also say that if you're really great about your food waste, if you're composting, if you're not eating a lot of meat and dairy, then your trash is not going to be all that disgusting. So perhaps you can even just line your trash can with some newspaper and then throw it directly in the bin and negate the use for a plastic bag or any bag altogether. I will say I personally am not there. Maybe you are. And if so, good, congratulations to you. I'm not, but just some food for that.
Nancy noted that she reuses bags for dogs and cats. And I think you're referring to like plastic store bags. We definitely use them too for picking up your waste from your pets. So that's a good suggestion. Any more questions? All right. Okay, well, oh wait, I'm in the process of collecting vegetable peels in a freezer bag. Looks like you can be pressure cooked to make broth. Is that true?
Yes, you don't even have to pressure cook it. You can just cook it in a pot on the stove with some water, add a little soy sauce, add a little salt and pepper. Make sure you add a carrot, some garlic, an onion, and that's it. And then whatever other vegetable scraps you have on hand, let it simmer for, I don't know, an hour. And then you have this amazing vegetable broth without having to buy it in those Tetra packs, right? Those plastic lined boxes, which by the way, are not conventionally recyclable.
What's your take on coffins?
Oh, Frankie. Wow, you just took us to a whole nother level here. So I know a little bit about coffins because I had a very sudden and tragic death recently. I will say that an awful lot of the coffins on the market are essentially plastic, right? I would say if you are researching your options, they do have natural wood coffins that are much more environmentally friendly than the fancy schmancy lacquered ones that are currently commonplace. I hope that answers your question. State laws dictate coffin minimums. I don't know what you mean by that.
It's like a plastic bag. I think that's probably a whole different discussion of state rules.
You know, I don't know specifically what Michigan's burial rules are. However, I guess I would say sustainable minimalism is about challenging, the convention, right? So whatever you're told, like be skeptical, like whatever's pushed at you, like push back. That's a very countercultural way of looking at it. But whenever something's pushed at me, I take that as a challenge to do my own research and figure out the answer on my own. The most eco-friendly answer on my own. Floodplains have issues with resurfacing bodies. Okay. I don't know, Frankie. I'm sorry, I want to help, but yeah,
Oh, what do you think of the minimalist documentaries? That's a good question, Donna.
So I should say that This is a great question. Actually, the first minimalist documentary, which was, I think it was called like Focusing on the Important Things, was my entry point into minimalism. My husband and I had just put our newborn daughter to bed. We were exhausted. We were stressed out. We plopped on the couch for that work, scroll, spend cycle. We put on Netflix and we tried to find something that we could compromise on, right? Like something that we both would like and would not fall asleep. And we landed on that first minimalist documentary, and it really spoke to me. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't probably watched that documentary, but I will also say that it left a lot of holes in the conversation, especially when it comes to eco-friendliness. And that's actually, I didn't mention this in my introduction, but that's actually why I'm here. I was following the minimalists. I was following Marie Kondo. I was following, the other big names, and nobody was talking about the connection between eco-friendliness and minimalism. And so I started a blog because I thought, well, if nobody's talking about it, why not me? How much work could it be? How hard could it be? And here we are. Wow, we're still talking about burial. Frankie, if you email me, I might have a resource for you. I'm not going to go into it at this precise moment because we're really going to bring down the vibe to a whole nother level. But if you email me, I have a resource for you. Anybody else? I want to stay here all night. My husband took my kids out so that the place is quiet. So anybody else? Let's just stay all day.
Minimalist weddings.
Okay, so I should say first off the bat that this is not my forte because I had the most wasteful wedding in existence. Minimalism did not find me until after I got married. However, I've heard and seen, well, first of all, have a buffet, because a buffet means people take what they want to eat instead of like having it like thrown on their plates. I would say get a secondhand dress for sure. I would say if it's not too tacky, have people bring their own containers to take home their buffet leftovers. I would say decorate with local native plants. Don't ship your orchids from some tropical place. I would say, I would say don't register for stuff. That was like the biggest pitfall I fell into was, I need 12 place settings of fine china. And I need to go around the store with the clicker. I didn't need to do any of that. And I guess I'll just leave it there. Those are some beginner steps.
Oh yes, VG suggests pandemic has taught us how to have the smallest celebrations. Could continue post-pandemic instead of spending lavishly on a private affair. That's a good suggestion.
I wonder though. I wonder about that. I mean, I agree with you. And I think the pandemic in a lot of ways has done some amazing things for the planet. However, I wonder if we're going to come roaring back twofold. We'll see.
Any more questions for Stephanie?
Well, if anybody's typing, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I enjoyed every second. I hope to keep in touch with each and every one of you. This was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really want to thank you for coming and presenting for our little Michigan library. Oh, one thing I have here. Okay. Shruti wants to know, is there anything that can be installed for reducing water wastage?
Can you give me like some more clarification? I'm not sure I understand. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking no, but. Oh, you can like slow flow heads. Oh. So Shruti, I don't know anything about the water and air mixing. However, I will say a real simple tip for your shower heads, for your faucets, is slow flow. You can very easily purchase one of those, install it. Even I could install those, and you can reduce water waste. Another tip here would be to, like, if you have some water using appliances that are old, I wouldn't say go out and just, toss them, your washing machine, your dishwasher, let's say. However, when the old appliances do break, make sure you upgrade to an energy efficient model. Not only because they save energy, but also because they do save water. I don't have the statistic on hand, but they save an awful lot of water, especially on the washing machine. Now they have the sensors, right, to sense how much laundry is in the washing machine, and adjust the water accordingly. So I hope that answers your question. Nancy, yes. So we didn't get into all of that, but yes, if you wash your dishes and you don't use the dishwasher. So I will say, if you have an updated dishwasher, that saves more water than washing by hand. However, if you have an old dishwasher, that's not the case. And if you wash your dishes by hand, you're not going to like leave the tap running and, go one by one. You're going to fill up a bucket of soapy water, right? You're going to wash the dishes one by one. You're going to like put them to the side, and then you're going to rinse them all together. So that's another really, really easy tip. Like that's what I love about sustainable minimalism, right? Is like everybody can make one little change without completely upending their lives. Good for you, Frankie. I use 1 gallon water for doing dishes. Yep. Another hint there, Frankie says, in summer I use gray water in the garden. Another hint here is like, if you want to get intense with saving water, you could put a bucket at the bottom of your shower, right? And when your water's heating up, like in my house, I have an old house, water takes a good 3-4 minutes before it's warm enough for me to step in. Put a bucket at the bottom of your shower, collect that perfectly decent water, and then use that to water your plants or to boil your pasta or whatever. And speaking of pasta, you can use that starchy water to water plants. So you can boil your pasta, reserve the water, and then not all the time, because then your plants will become insect repellers. But sometimes you can use that water and then water your plants. No, don't use. Yeah. I mean, Frankie, I'm sorry, but I'm like talking to you like you're here, but Frankie says, don't reuse water if it has oil in it. Yeah. I don't personally put oil in my pasta water. So I'll just leave that there. Nancy says, if anyone in Northville wants to vermiculture, I can share with a few folks for composting. Perhaps Stephanie to send me an email. Nancy, I don't have your email, so you're gonna have to email me. It's on the screen. And I will also say that if you vermiculture, then you are the person to talk to, like convert people. Because in what I do, I see a lot of resistance to vermiculture. So I would love to talk to you offline about how you bring people on board, because I could use that information in my own capacity as a sustainable minimalist.
Houseworms.
Anybody else?
Well, I will say it's really gracious of you to share your personal email, and I think that attendees should utilize it if they feel the need, and then also subscribe to the podcast and check out her book from the library. I think we might be the only one that will have a copy in our collection. It's not quite through processing yet, so it will be there soon. But you know, once I know that, Stephanie, do you have other presentations booked for other libraries nearby, or?
Oh, yes. And I thank you for that, Samantha. I have a lot.
Great.
I just want to thank you personally. I'm going to be doing this a lot in Michigan in the coming months. So I'm really excited about it. And offline, I'd love to ask you like how you found me.
We can discuss that. But basically, there'll be more books in our shared network, so we could always get more copies from other libraries nearby. So yeah, I want to thank everyone for attending tonight, and again, a huge thank you to Stephanie. And this was recorded, so it will be posted on our website shortly. And yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night. And I'm always here to answer questions or just, to say hi. So thank you so much.